This is LXBN TV, and I'm Colin O'Keefe. As everyone is well aware, the legal industry is currently going through some trying times. To look at some of the numbers and to attempt to explain what might be behind them, we bring in Ronda Muir, founder and principal of Law People Management LLC and author on the Law People blog. Ronda, when we look at the numbers, what really stands out to you as being the most representative of the state of the legal industry? Is it what's happening in large law, the total number of jobs, mergers? What do you think stands out as being the most indicative of the state of things right now?
Well, I think the biggest factor, which the Citibank financials reported last month, is that there's really no demand. There's no legal demand. And so we have, as they concluded, overcapacity. And that's really what's driving the poor results we're getting at all levels of law firms. Now, it's segmented. Some law firms, some types of law firms are doing a little better. The largest, the AmLaw 1 through 50, are actually doing the worst. Mm-hmm. The AmLaw 50 to 100, and then what they call the second 100, which is 100 to 200, those are doing better. The second 100 are doing the best as far as, 50 to 100 and the second 100 are both doing well. 50 to 100 has both strong revenue growth and demand growth compared to the last few years. And the second 100 has not particularly large revenue growth. That's because they're actually adding jobs. They're adding equity partners, which no other segment is. So we have a very paralyzed legal market for the most part, and I think it's the major problem is overcapacity.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, touching on that a little bit there, but why, in your mind, is this happening? Is it a reflection of the economy as a whole, or is there something more to become, to what's become these trying times for law firms?
The economy as a whole has definitely plays a part, but law firms have traditionally just not been up to date on evolving as the world has evolved. So, for example, law firms have been very, very slow to adopt technology, and other industries have been using it all along. And in downturns, law firms tend to batten down the hatches, lower their expenses, and try to wait everything out, as opposed to investing in what's going to help them, infrastructure, relationships, and when the economy starts to improve. So there are law firms that are at a particular disadvantage right now, more so than the general economy.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've definitely seen that where law firms will, they're a little bit more conservative in what they do. They may not take trying times as an opportunity to invest in marketing and those types of things. Instead, cutting those expenses where they can and just playing it safe. And then finally, in your mind, how do law firms and their lawyers adapt in these trying times? What must be done both inside law firms and in the industry to correct this decline?
Well, unfortunately, the entire business model is going to have to be looked at. We've always operated on this pyramid form where we have a lot of lawyers coming in at the bottom, young lawyers that are trained. Then there's the keepers that you try to keep, and there's a high high attrition rate, which the firms want because they're able to sort of get rid of the people that aren't up to performing to their standards. And then eventually you get a few partners made. That pyramid shape is no longer viable, and most law firms have not come to grips with that yet. What the legal industry looks like now is more like a barbell. There is a whole big group at one end that are new graduates or inexperienced lawyers who are charging $45 an hour for their time doing document review and that sort of thing. There's very few people in the pipeline between inexperienced lawyers and the high-end lawyers, and that's partly because there are no jobs, as we've seen. And the reason there are no jobs is there's no demand. So there's a very thin group in the middle that are actually getting the kind of training that traditionally happened in the pyramid-shaped law firm. And then we have at the other end of the barbell, the $1,000 an hour First Amendment, bet the ranch IP lawyers. They're going to be fine. But the question now becomes, how do you get lawyers from one end of the barbell to the other end of the barbell? It's no longer a pyramid. How are we going to get them? How are we going to raise and educate those really sophisticated lawyers who perform at the top of the profession. And the other question is, what do we do about all the people in the middle and at the bottom?
Mm-hmm.
Because their futures are not looking that bright. And we're talking about a good decade probably before this gets worked out.
Yeah, and the clock is ticking. I mean, the people at the one end of the barbell, some of them are retiring, and these are the people who are making rain for their firm. So it's going to be interesting to watch as these people move on from their current professions, how that slants, this barbell shape that we have right now.
In fact, the reason they're not making partners, the reason there are no equity partners being made, essentially, is because a lot of the baby boomers are hanging on to their jobs. They lost money out of their portfolio. They're totally career dedicated, so they're hanging on to their jobs, and law firms aren't making partners until partners leave. They want a net growth, zero growth. There's a guy named Richard Susskind who wrote a book called The End of Lawyers, and he's in England, and he's high on technology, but one of the things he said about law firms is that not only do they have to develop a less rigid hierarchy, something more different from the pyramid, but they also have to start thinking about building fences at the top of a cliff instead of sending in ambulances at the bottom. And I think that's where the future of law lies, is becoming so entwined with your business partner's goals, which is to have fences at the top of the cliffs, not ambulances at the bottom. So I'm hoping that we are going to move more in that direction, and perhaps a hard time with the economy is what will help us move that way.
Yeah, it's going to be something that, something's going to have to be done in the near future, and it's going to be interesting to see which way things go, and hopefully it's a direction that leads to a more thriving legal economy. So it'll be interesting to watch. Once again, that was Ronda Muir of Law People Management and the Law People blog. For more of her insight, be sure to visit her publication. It's at lawpeopleblog.com. And for more LXBN TV interviews, be sure to visit us at lxbn.lexblog.com. Thanks, Ronda.
Thank you, Colin.